FC Barcelona at the moment find themselves against the ropes. Having struggled greatly financially over the last decade due to poor management of the club, they have been left in a very terrible situation and now have to deal with the looming threat of Real Madrid's third iteration of the Galacticos. Pretty much since we saw the trio of Messi, Suarez and Neymar win Barcelona's second treble, things have pretty much been downhill in both football and behind the scene perspectives. And in all honesty, their biggest grievances on the pitch have trickled down from the bad decisions that are coming from the people upstairs. And those decisions are the same ones that left the club in financial disarray. The interesting part is we all witnessed pretty much the exact moment things took a left turn for Barcelona, at least in recent history. And we've all just been witnessing the effects since. And real quick boys, if you're new to the channel, enjoy the content, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Helps the channel out a ton. Uploading weekly football videos, so make sure you hit that noti bell. Stay subscribed, don't miss any of the uploads. And if you're not new to the channel boys, welcome back. Glad to have you around for another video. With that being said boys, let's get into Barcelona and how they've been declining from a specific point in time. I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement when I say that Neymar's departure from Barcelona in the 17-18 season is what quickly derailed what the club had going on. Having failed to capture another Champions League in embarrassing fashion, winning one more La Liga title, and being unable to escape Messi's shadow as the star of the team, Neymar decided to pave his own legacy in a move to PSG that shocked the world. From a footballing perspective, losing Neymar at the height of the Real Madrid-Barcelona power struggle hurt them drastically when simply looking at attack versus attack, because realistically the midfields were still pretty much on level. Barcelona definitely had the disadvantage as Messi and Suarez alone were not going to be enough when going up against Bale, Benzema and Ronaldo. Barcelona had to move in the transfer window, and they had this 222 million euro war chest to work with since the departure of Neymar. And then this is when disaster struck.
When your club has just paid close to £100 million for a new player, you would expect to see something special. What you wouldn't expect is to see that future star fail at something most football-mad schoolchildren can do.
It was a great weekend for Barcelona because they finally got their man, Philippe Coutinho, 160 million euros.
They would go on to splash 105 million euros on a young Ousmane Dembele and 145 million euros on Philippe Coutinho, who seemed to be at his peak. And these would be the catalyst for the downward trajectory of this club from that point moving forward. On top of the insane amount of money that they spent on these two players, the wages at Barcelona were also ridiculous and incredibly unsustainable. When you have Samuel Umtiti making 615 million euros a week, you are bound to end up where you are. You guys might see I support United, so our wage structure is always being criticized. Samuel Umtiti on 615 million euros, whoever drew up that contract deserves jail time. Coutinho and Dembele would both end up flopping over time, and thus Barcelona were never really ever to recapture the brilliant style of play that won them that treble. And they would also be constantly bounced out of the Champions League, unable to reclaim another title. From the 17-18 season to today, Barcelona have made the semifinals once and have failed to get past the quarterfinals every other time. Additionally, they've only managed 3 league titles in that same period, clearly showing how they struggled to get close to the dominance that they had shown in the late 2000s and the early 2010s. They would also continue to sign players for ridiculous fees and high wages that would continue to flop and just keep digging deeper financial holes. The likes of Griezmann, Pjanic, and Malcolm, alongside the aforementioned Coutinho and Dembele, are the biggest names that come to mind there in this Barcelona banter era in terms of players on ridiculous wages, ridiculous transfer fees, who just absolutely flop. I also think it's important to note, after the success of Luis Enrique, Barcelona have had 6 different managers, with only one of them finding success being Ernesto Valverde, who actually immediately followed Luis Enrique. It's been a revolving door at Barcelona of players and managers who have been sucking the club dry of their finances. What also definitely digged a much deeper trench in Barcelona's already growing financial issues was that one major life event that happened in 2020. See, one of their biggest money makers for Barcelona is their stadium, the Camp Nou, both through matchday tickets as well as museum tours. With the entire world shut down, there is no way to rely on income from the biggest money maker that you have. And without winning the best competitions that pay you the most money, it's gonna be hard to recoup the losses that you're steadily growing. This then led to a domino effect where Barcelona lost its second biggest money maker, Lionel Messi. In the 21-22 season, Messi left for free to PSG, as Barcelona literally could not afford to renew his contract. Even if they would have sold a ton of players, it would not have been possible. Granted, it did take off a massive wage off their books, but even with that, it was still not really enough to dig them out of this hole that they were in. At this point, calling it a hole is an understatement. So with Messi gone, Barcelona's merchandising revenue took a massive hit since no one was going to go out of their way to buy an Ousmane Dembele kit. At this point, it was really panic stations for Barcelona. In the previous seasons, they had already sold the likes of Vidal, Rakitic, Cucurella, Andre Gomes, Malcolm, Todibo, and Luis Suarez, and this was still not enough to give Barcelona breathing room in the financial sector. One thing to know for Barcelona at this point was that Laporta was back at the presidential seat, and he was the one who managed to turn things around for the Spanish side in the 2000s when they did face similar circumstances. So in 2022, Barcelona were forced to pull economic levers where they would sell off percentages of their TV and merchandising rights, which on one hand takes a little bit of revenue from them, but it was essentially a huge influx of cash at that very moment. This would allow them to generate the funds to minimize their massive debts to something a lot more manageable, which also gave them a lot of breathing room when it comes to making the transfers that they desperately needed. That summer for the 22-23 season, they would go on to sign Koundé, Lewandowski, and Rafinha, players who added a lot of quality to the squad, which again they very desperately needed. From here on out, Barcelona would be in a slightly better position, which we saw as they would go on to be crowned La Liga champions for the first time since the 18-19 season. The following campaign would see them finally get Griezmann and Dembele off the books, alongside many other players, which allowed them to bring a couple of quality players like João Felix on loan and Gundogan on a free. And they did also take a massive risk on Vitor Roque, as they signed him for a whopping 30 million euros, despite the fact that he was very unproven. However, inconsistent results on the pitch would prove to be a disastrous season, and thus Barcelona wouldn't really receive much revenue from the competitions that they participated in, and this would kind of put them in an awkward position where it leads them to where they are now. And pair this with the fact that they're taking on the renovation of their stadium, and finances once again have become tight, at possibly the worst timing from a competitive standpoint, since their rivals are probably the strongest they've been in a very long time. See, for Real Madrid, after winning their 15th Champions League just last season, with a squad that already consisted of Modric, Tchouameni, Valverde, Rodrigo, Vinicius, Rudiger, Courtois, Bellingham, Madrid finally acquired the signature of Mbappe to officially kick off their third Galacticos era. In all honesty, Madrid are going to be the favorites for everything. For La Liga, for the Champions League, Copa del Rey, everything, because they have the best squad in the world. So now it's time to see what Barcelona can do with all these odds stacked against them. So to combat this, Barcelona had their eyes set on two major targets, Nico Williams and Dani Olmo, two players who lit the Euros up for Spain, who would eventually take the trophy home. With Lewandowski, Lamine Yamal, Rafinha, Pedri, and Gavi all still at the club, these two guys would have been massive additions to the squad that would have given them a fighting chance. Weirdly enough, Barcelona did let Gundogan go on a free back to Man City, and realistically why they did this is to clear up funds to be able to bring in players and register players for the La Liga season, but it's very backwards in my opinion. See, I understand the idea of wanting to clear up those funds to try and sign and register these guys, but Gundogan is one of those players who adds so much value to your team, so it had to have been a very disappointing choice for Barcelona fans. You're literally making your team weaker in one sector to make it stronger in another. There's not enough balance there, and all of that's coming down again to the fact that finances are very tight. Barcelona would strike out on Nico Williams, who would choose to stay at his boyhood club alongside his brother, but would land the signature of Dani Olmo. However, again, due to financial complications, Olmo would not be able to register for the squad until this past third match day, and he would only be able to register as there were some loopholes that Barcelona were able to take advantage of, since Christensen would be ruled out with an injury until December. However, in just his first appearance, it's clear to see why he was signed and just how much of an impact it's going to make for this Barcelona side. But if Barcelona can't figure this financial situation out, it's going to be a very tough battle. So that begs the question, Barcelona, all these odds stacked against them, do they stand a chance against Real Madrid, both in La Liga and in the Champions League? In all honesty, Barcelona does not have the depth to compete with Real Madrid or even go too deep in the Champions League. Granted, the performances we saw from Yamal at the Euros were absolutely generational, but over the course of the season, if injuries strike down this Barcelona side, they're going to be in trouble. Barcelona, over these last couple of years, have also been heavily relying on La Masia to produce these talents, these 16, 17, 18-year-olds that they're then throwing into the first team and it's really throwing something at the wall and seeing if it sticks. They've pretty much struck gold with Lamine Yamal. Kubarsi looks like he has a lot of potential, but they're also throwing these other players in who don't look the most convincing, and these are the players they're going to have to rely on if major players get injured. On top of that, if you're giving these 16, 17-year-olds a lot of game time, and if they're not these generational talents like we see with Lamine Yamal and Endrick at Madrid and Mainu at United, then they're gonna get hurt. Their bodies are not ready. They're not physically, mentally ready. They're gonna get hurt, and we saw this with some of the injuries that Barcelona have already picked up this season. In one-off games against Madrid, they may be able to get a win or two, but over the 38 games, it's gonna be tough to maintain a presence as number one when that's the team that you have to go up against. To be fair to Barcelona, have won their first 3 games this season, while Madrid have already failed to win one of their games. But of course, it's too early to really tell how the season's gonna go. Barca really have all the odds stacked against them at this very moment. Financially, they're in the gutter. They're still recovering from this massive hole that they pretty much dug themselves into. On the pitch, at the moment, they are making the most out of the talent that they do have at their disposal. But compare this to the new Galacticos, who even have great depth coming off the bench. And you see an exact comparison between one club that was able to manage their funds tremendously and one who was not. Of course, it's football, so anything could happen. No success is guaranteed, but for the foreseeable future, Barcelona is going to be the underdog in Spanish football when compared to their biggest rival.